It wasn't quite the box office battle Hollywood wanted it to be this weekend, with with Wicked and Gladiator II going toe-to-toe in movie theaters. The musical movie adaptation soared with a nearly $114 million domestic opening, making it the biggest premiere ever for a Broadway movie adaptation. Into the Woods previously held that title, opening to just $31 million in 2014. Internationally, Wicked raked in an additional $50.2 million, giving it a total opening of $164 million, while Gladiator II limped behind the musical phenomenon domestically, opening to $55.5 million. It succeeded in the international market to the tune of $165.5 million and overtook Wicked's worldwide box office significantly due to opening 1 week earlier internationally. Glicked wasn't the Barbenheimer we know and love, but it sure did help boost box office all over the world. Who was enchanted or entertained by this?
Well, last year I participated in Barbenheimer, and this year I participated in Glicked. I'm sure that's to no one's surprise. And while Glicked did not reach the heights of Barbenheimer, I came away pretty impressed with one of these movies, not the other. So let's start by talking about Wicked. Went into this one without having seen the Broadway play, never read the book. I believed in the buzz and the fervor that was kind of building around it, but I will admit that I kind of went in with measured expectations. And I shiz you not, the hype is real. The hype is real. Like, I was swept up in the magic. John M. Chu, he's 2 for 2 with musicals for me. I know In the Heights did not do all that well theatrically. It was one of those day and date releases, so it suffered a little bit there. But the camera work, the musical numbers, the performances, the world building, the stagecraft, the choice to include so many practical effects, Cynthia Erivo's performance, Ariana Grande delivering on the comedic front. Like, this was an amazing film, and I highly, highly recommend it. But I will say, if you are sensitive to the theater experience, you may want to hold off a couple of weeks on this one, because I went and saw this thing, and while there was nobody outright like belting to any of these songs, there were definitely some people that I will describe as having main character energy in the theater, which is difficult for someone like me, but I got through it. Gladiator II, on the other hand, it did not do anything to offend me, but it just did not justify its existence to me. It was really, really paint by numbers, to the point that it just kind of felt lackluster and pointless. And I'm actually kind of surprised, like, looking back, I remember some like early reviews and press screenings were talking about this might be like an awards contender. I just do not see it. It's better than Napoleon, but at this point, I think Ridley Scott really needs to look at his screenplays before he decides to put anything else out there, especially when it's like highly valued properties and IP that, still gives him some value. He doesn't want to tarnish that reputation anymore. But I'm curious to hear what everybody else thinks about these performances and the whole Glicked phenomenon. And let's get into it.
You're stronger than me, Scotty. So when I do finally see Wicked, I'll look to the western sky in honor of you. That's a lyric joke. Anyway, I'm not gonna have time to see these movies, unfortunately, like for a while. It's just the way my schedule is right now, and I'm okay with that for a lot of the reasons about Wicked that Scotty talked about. Is I do just want to enjoy it without people thinking that they are Ariana Grande or Cynthia Erivo, or that they got to play them on their high school stage or whatever. Like, I don't need that in my viewing experience. I'm glad people can enjoy things that way, but when I go to a movie theater, I just don't want that. Like, I just want to watch the movie. So I definitely won't be seeing it, but I knew this would be huge. The comparison in the article and that we talk about is to Into the Woods, which is from it is 10 years ago, which is crazy. And movie musicals since then, Hamilton aside, because it was streaming only, I think, on Disney Plus. I can't remember if Hamilton was in theaters or not, but
I don't think so.
They just haven't succeeded that much. But Wicked is a very unique show, and when it was very popular back in 2005, it was, if you were in music of any kind, like, it was in the zeitgeist. You knew about Stephen Schwartz's lyrics, you knew about Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth being the leads, and so it was huge. So I knew this would be huge for people my age and older who grew up with that show, and then younger people who were discovering it with popular leads that they love, including Jonathan Bailey. So yeah, I'm not surprised by this. I did see a quote earlier today from the marketing director for this film, and that they took Barbie as an example of how to market this film. And I know a few weeks ago I said that Wicked is everywhere. It's in all these products, it's in all these lines, and it was all over my algorithm. Just because it wasn't all over some other people's doesn't mean it wasn't huge. And I think that their campaign worked, and the numbers speak for themselves. So I'm glad they're both doing well, and I want to see them both. I just kind of want to see them alone.
The marketing for this movie was unlike anything we've ever seen. I mean, Barbie did it, but Barbie walked so Wicked could run. With the pairing of the film with product lines was just on another level. Like, if you went to Target and paid attention, or if you watched commercials and paid attention, they just were infusing the palette of the pink and the green and all of that into makeup and food, and even like car commercials had Wicked connections. And I mean, it was everywhere, and it was masterful. I mean, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that because of the success that you mentioned, Barbie, and then obviously with this, it's clearly paid off, and it was going on months in advance. Like, there was a clear plan of a buildup of marketing for this movie, and now it's out there. It's got the A cinema score. People are going to keep seeing it. Gladiator, on the other hand, has a B cinema score, which is not great for a big franchise movie. For a franchise movie, you want to be A minus. B plus is like you're getting a little bit nervous, but to get a B, it just tells you that people are sort of leaving the theater and saying what you said, Scotty. They're kind of walking away saying, I don't know if I'd see this again. I don't know if I'd tell my friends to go see this. I think I might tell them to wait for streaming or whatever. And that's a sign here of two very different properties. One that is going to ascend over the next couple weekends. It was just reported today that Wicked had a record Monday, raked in about $16 million domestically on Monday, which is very high for a Monday.
That's people trying to avoid people singing in the theater.
Yeah, exactly.
That is people going to, on like off nights. I bet it'll have a record Tuesday, a record Wednesday.
Yeah. It'd be like, it's the weirdest thing ever. Like, a record number of people saw it at 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Like, it's like, but
you know their plan didn't work. There's still a lot of people in those theaters.
I was gonna say, you gotta wait for like 8 weeks later.
Because you got the other person that's like, oh, I'm gonna go see it at 11 a.m. so I can sing.
Yeah, so I can sing my heart out.
But I think the conversation around the theater is really interesting, especially as we move through November. Moana 2 is just on the horizon. That movie's coming out here just in a matter of days. And so you've got that being thrown into the mix. But I think if you're Wicked, I think you're feeling fine about that. You're looking at that and saying, you bring it on, Disney. Like, we here at Universal are coming for your Thanksgiving week, which has traditionally been a Disney week. Like, that's when their big releases have come out. And a lot of other productions have stayed away, and theater and studios have stayed away from that week because they don't want to get into the Disney of it all. And so now it's dominated by Universal, by this other studio, and I think we're looking ahead to next November. Well, Wicked 2 is coming out next November in this same spot. It's coming out right around Thanksgiving, and it'll dominate again. It'll be even bigger whenever Wicked 2 comes out. Now, Disney at this moment has Zootopia on the schedule. I don't even know what number this is, 3, 4, something like that. So, I mean, we can workshop it now. Are we thinking like Wootopia? Are we thinking like I don't know how to make it work, but that's on the horizon for next November. And you know, if I'm Disney, I'm like, let's get out of here. Like, let's put something else here because I just don't want to put these movies up against one another. But we've talked about Moana 2, and is it going to clash with Wicked? Are you going to have a similar audience? But I mean, it's proven that this particular movie is a roaring success and is going to hold strong and continue to have strong weekends here going forward, I would imagine, for the rest of November and beyond.
It's interesting because there's Disney people who love Disney musicals, and then there's Broadway people, and there's a lot of crossover there. Obviously, there's just musical fans, but I do think there are slightly different audiences there. I think there's like the theater kids who love Broadway, and then there's the kind of like family types that love their Disney stuff, and obviously lots of crossover, but I don't think I don't think the Venn diagram is a circle. I think there's some separation there. But the thing about Wicked, with all the colors and the theme and the princess vibe and the witch vibe, like it kind of feels Disney-esque, even if it isn't, which I think like brings in some of that crowd. Well, and it's Wizard of Oz. It's also a classic movie. You know, like it's something that like if you don't care anything about, there are people who just went to see, you know, every version of Wizard of the Oz. Was Oz the Great and Powerful a few years ago, and just because they love Wizard of Oz movies, you know. So I think it's got a lot going for it. A couple marketing things that I find interesting. One of the things that we had going into Barbenheimer was this idea of the two styles. Like they had a lot of people being like, are you Barbie or are you Oppenheimer? And like, what are you going to wear to the theater and how that could affect? But in this, like, Wicked has that built into its own thing. Every piece of a product placement I saw was like, are you the good witch or are you the bad witch? You know, like, are you green or pink? Like, there's this whole thing. And I think that in itself took over the narrative to where it didn't need Gladiator to differentiate itself from something else. It had its own, like, internal struggle that you could have and still stay within that movie. I think it's really clever. It almost like houses with Harry Potter, where you have these, like, you know, these things. Yeah, I'm a fan of this movie, but I'm a fan of that part of it. You know, it's just a very interesting thing to kind of pit your fans against each other in a way, but it still just brings it up even more. And the other thing is, why don't they have sing-along theaters? Do they have that? That's got to be a thing, right?
They're going to do those. They're just doing it later, and they should have done it first.
They should have done it first. They should do, like, literally, like, this is a sing-along theater, this is a silent theater. Like, they should just have that distinction on the,
which, like,
times.
You don't have to be silent during a movie, but I just don't want you singing the entire catalog next to me. Like,
well, you could also have, like, regular or something. I don't know. I just think, funneling people to a sing-along theater would be a really smart move.
They're doing those showings. It's just like, you should have done this first. Like, because people were so hyped for this movie, and that's what they want to go do, and whatever. I mean,
it also would just be a completely different communal experience for people to go to. I mean, like, I would go if they did a Hamilton, if they ever do a Hamilton that's actually like a movie and not just the stage performance. I will be there, and I will have a really hard time not singing every word. I love that, and they should absolutely do this and sing along.
They will.
They're learning. The Eras Tour movie, I think, taught them they need to do more of that.
Well, Rocky Horror Picture Show, that's been running for, like, how many years?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Sure.
The person who did marketing for this movie, though, like, just kind of bringing it back to that, like, they did such little tiny things, too. Like, one that really stood out to me is if you bought your ticket on certain sites, I think it was on the AMC site, you know, they show you the seat that you've taken, and it's usually just whited out. But with Wicked, if you bought a ticket, it turned it into like a little witch hat or something. Like, it made like a little,
that's cute.
And so now, like, for Nosferatu now, it's turning it into little coffins, because it's like they're realizing, like, wait a minute, people, they want the little thing to pop up when they've bought the ticket or whatever, and they'll screenshot it and they'll share it, and it just gets the conversation going. It's just like
treat.
The little detail. That's such a tiny. It's such a tiny detail, but stuff like that, like, that's the stuff that they're thinking about that other people aren't. You know, it's just like little teeny tiny little things that just stack and add up to where people are like, I got to see this in the theater. I can't wait for streaming for this one.
Well, and that's the thing it's interesting about that is the witch's hat or the Nosferatu head or whatever. It's not about you seeing that movie. If you're doing that, you've already seen that movie. That is an idea that is trying to perpetuate the idea that the movie-going experience is something novel and interesting, and it cares about your experience. And, like, you do it once, and you're like, oh, it gave me little witches' hats. That's cool. I wonder what this movie will do. You know, like, you want to go to the next one. It gets you. It's about bringing back theaters and, like, seeing that experience have all these little novelties that it needs to survive. You know.
It's the event phenomenon, and we've been talking about that since Barbenheimer, that to be truly, truly phenomenal at the box office, your movie has to be an event. And Wicked has been the event, and Gladiator 2 just hasn't. You haven't seen all the same buzz around it and people dressing up and stuff like that. So
it's hard to dress up like that, though.
Yeah,
that's a lot of dedication.
You mied get kicked out.
I'm just saying.
I want to see a guy in full gladiator garb come out of the theater. Is this how Rome treats its heroes?
And nobody dressed up like that to go to Oppenheimer either. But it's like, which one's gonna win out?
Yeah, I think some people did, like, just to
not
be
like they did for Barbie. That was my
Barbie.
point. Similar with Wicked. So anyway.
Hey, Ridley Scott, just to bring Gladiator into this conversation for a minute, is already talking about the script for Gladiator 3, so just be prepared for that at some point. He did say it will not take 30 years like the last one, but I guess they are talking about it. And his budget was out of control for Gladiator 2. Like, it was absolutely outrageous. And they're going to make their money back, I think, just based on this opening weekend, but it's not going to be a lot. Like, they're going to probably just break even on Gladiator 2 because the budget was so high. But still, that if you're Ridley Scott, that probably gets you a third one, I guess, if you can get the people back together. So that's something to look for on the horizon.
Well, Jay, you mentioned Moana 2 opening next weekend, and I think Gladiator 2 will continue to benefit from some counter-programming. The people that just don't want to check out Wicked, they're not going to see Moana 2. It might benefit from that, but the review embargoes for Moana 2 are lifting, like, as of today, as of this afternoon, and it's coming in pretty lukewarm, so that will be one to keep an eye on. It'll be interesting to see if it does present a problem for Wicked or any real competition, because the reviews are coming in kind of soft, but that one has been such a juggernaut on Disney Plus. I just have to wonder if the families are going to go out in droves for that one or not.
Yeah, usually you wait usually your review embargo, you want that to lift like a week or two before the movie, because you really want the positive buzz to get out there and people talking about, oh, the Rotten Tomatoes score is this and that and whatever. But with Moana 2, they did the red flag thing of pushing the review embargo until basically the day the movie comes out, which is not... It's just not a good sign. It means that they want you to not be talking about the reviews. So I think probably Disney knew on some level that the reviews were not going to necessarily do them favors in the conversation, especially while you've got all of this discussion around Wicked and Gladiator and all these other movies. It's just, you run the risk of yours getting lost if it comes out with a Rotten Tomatoes score of like 65% or something. It just kind of can get lost in the conversation. But the families are big here for sure.
J. Scotty, you saw Gladiator. Did you find it to just be, you said paint by numbers, was it very much like similar to the first one? Was it just a little too close? Was it a retread too much?
It did the thing that a lot of legacy sequels do, where it wants to pay a lot of homage to the original, even in terms of like the construction of the narrative, but this one just felt hollow. It felt like it was aping it and not really like doing it in a tactful or way that really honored it. It's just like, oh, this worked 20, 30 years ago, right? Let's do it for maybe somebody that, didn't see that movie, or it's going to be enough for that one guy that loves Gladiator. They'll be like, oh, member berries. But I was kind of harsh on my review, and I have to address this comment because it's Jess K said it didn't justify its existence as a savage comment, and then TV and Movie Guy said, I hope I don't have to live by that standard. And it did remind me, this is a little insight into my life, and probably sharing too much, but it reminds me, my grandfather, loved my grandfather, but he was a Marine, so he's kind of a hardcore dude. Once me and a few of my cousins had all reached like a certain age of like early 20s adulthood, he like had all of us in his house, and he asked us that question: what are you doing to justify your existence? And we all just like looked at each other like, did our grandfather really just ask us this?
Wait, was it Thanksgiving Day too?
No, it wasn't
on theme with our show today.
He wasn't that harsh. He was pretty harsh, but not that harsh.
That's amazing.
To say something positive about Gladiator 2, though, it does have some truly epic action set pieces. There are a couple that really impressed me, but that's really all that stuck out about the movie.
Yeah, it's always disappointing to me. It reminds me of Force Awakens a little bit, where like, it's been a long time since we had a Star Wars movie. Let's retread the first one. Let's really retread what we've done in the past to bring it back. And that's like a thing you can do. But when it's the same director, it just feels cheap to me. It's like you'd think you'd want to like blaze new trails thematically, story wise, and not just retread. And that's the reason I ask about it at all is Jeff said the same thing on MCU Cast we were talking about, and he said the same, that it just felt like a retread of the first. So yeah.
Yeah, Star Wars is actually a really good comparison, The Force Awakens specifically, and I'll tread lightly for spoilers here, but the convenience of how connected certain characters are and just like how certain items show up in certain locations, it's just like, come on, like you're straining the my ability to believe here.
Yeah. I just don't think Gladiator is that kind of universe. You know what I mean? It's
right,
not like
exactly.
It's not like a franchise universe in my head. It could be an interesting thing to make a sequel of. There's a difference between I know literally there's not, but like there's a difference between the kind of franchise that Star Wars or Marvel are and the kind of movie that just has sequels. You know, like, and I think, I don't know what exactly that distinction is, but there's something about like world building and living in a different kind of environment. And I know that Gladiator is, but it's also just the past. I don't know. There's just something interesting there that I don't have fully fleshed out thoughts on, but I think there's something there. Somebody else figure it out.
I can't, because then I would have to justify my existence, and I'm not ready to do that yet.
We'll figure it out on the sequel for Multiverse News.
Good. You just watched a clip from Multiverse News. If you liked it, go to our channel. We got a whole episode that it comes from. So go check that out and hit the like and subscribe. And we got lots of clips you'll enjoy, but also full hour-long episodes of Multiverse News with lots of things that don't even make it to clips. So check us out.
You stay clippy.